What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm your host for today, Simon Voyanos, aka Coach V. And it is December 20th, 2025 when I am recording this one. And I am here to bring you yet another 2026 Women's College Flag Football preview here. Make sure you check out my two other ones that I did on a variety of NAIA teams, D2 and D3 teams. And then also check out Cody's episode that he released last Friday featuring the defending national champs Ottawa, as well as a couple other universities in that one. We are in preseason mode. We are covering as many teams as possible, talking about last year, if they have that, key players on the roster, key additions, departures, all of that great stuff, and then storylines going into this season here. But on this episode, we have three brand new programs that not play last season, so it's going to be really exciting to talk about these new schools and programs joining the Women's College Flag Football ranks, and highlighting the great players as well as coaches who make up these teams. We have a lot of talent here on this episode, and I'm really excited. I think just having so many opportunities for these athletes to go play flag football is awesome, obviously. And, without some of these opportunities, I don't know if some of these players would have chosen to go ahead and play women's college flag football. But here they are, and let's just go ahead and hop right into the football and talk about some of these new programs ahead of their first season. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about an NAIA team out of Kentucky. We have Lindsey Wilson University, like I said, out of Columbia, Kentucky. They will be entering their very first season here in 2026, and I think they have a pretty good foundation right now over there. That starts with their head coach, Chris Raggard, who was the longtime head coach of Pace High School in Florida, who went 70-22 over 6 seasons there. I believe he was their first head girls flag football coach over there, and in his last season they would end up winning the regional / district championship I want to say that would be in 2024, and would also lose in the semis of the Florida 2A playoffs to Palmetto, who would end up winning state and only lost 12-6. Like I said, first ever coach for them over there. He's won 2 district championships. The regional title was a regional runner-up. I mean, he has the resume of somebody that you want to establish your program, especially in year one. And obviously, he sent plenty of players to the college ranks as well. And so he has left Pace and has went back to his home state of Kentucky here to lead this Lindsey Wilson team. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the roster, because I think it's a very good roster to start with. They recruited a class of 20. As of right now, they do not have an official roster up yet, but I was able to find their official recruiting class on their Twitter, so shout out that. I'm assuming most of these players are still on the roster. I know one is not, and we'll talk about that later here. Actually, let's just go ahead and talk about it now. So, out of Finland, they had a quarterback / just athlete in general in Lotta Wolf, who is very active on the international scene and has also played tackle football. She has actually transferred mid-semester to Midland, so I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she will be able to play for Midland in the 2026 season. And so that's pretty big time. Midland, they are an established program. I know this year they bring back Angel Ioane Kayo, but they are or have been looking for a quarterback of the future. So in that news, that's big time, but that does make this quarterback battle a little bit clearer. But I'm just going to be honest with you. I am expecting this specific quarterback to start because she has been one of the best just players in the country in the 4 years she has played, and she actually used to play for Coach Raggard over at Pace here, and that is Amaya Pablo, who in her career threw for 16,169 passing yards, 221 touchdowns to only 51 interceptions, also added on 2,950 rushing yards and 42 rushing touchdowns in the 4 years she played at Pace. One of the best, if not the best quarterback recruit in the country, at least in that last class, and I would definitely say the favorite to start. I mean, you have your head coach from high school there. You were super successful. I mean, the film speaks for itself. She could make the throws. She could extend plays, run, do all of those things. I think she is going to explode on the scene to start here. And so I'm very excited to see Coach Raggard once again coaching his quarterback, Amaya Pablo, this time in the college ranks. And so that's going to be super exciting. I think it's going to be electric once more here. She's super talented. I mean, got to watch a couple of her clips and highlights and stuff here and there. And so really high on Amaya Pablo, and I think she's going to be one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country this upcoming season. Now, joining her from Pace as well is Emily Good, who, like I said, was another former Pace player, won Defensive Player of the Year in her senior year, and was also a 4-year starter, tallying up 267 flagpoles, 11 sacks, and 12 interceptions in those 4 years. But her senior year got to start at receiver and was productive, brought in 67 receptions for 640 yards and 11 touchdowns, while also playing on defense, and it's just another great two-way player that you want to add to your team. Whenever you add a productive player from Florida, you really can't go wrong with that. So she'll be joining as well. They also bring in, and like I said, if I say any of these names wrong, please feel free to reach out to us on social media so that we know how to say it right, because we're going to be doing not season previews, we're doing those right now, but we're going to be doing weekly recaps on these teams and games that we watch, and so we want to make sure we get the right things. But anyways, as I was saying, they will also bring in, I think it's Jaylani Santiago from Massachusetts. She was an All-American, a very good linebacker with good flag pulling ability and decent ball skills, good ball skills for a linebacker, so she'll help, shore up that defense, give them something to work with. And then, speaking of high school recruits still, they also bring in Chrissy, I think it's Rabarchek, a wide receiver, running back, rusher from Auburndale, down in, I believe it is Florida. Yes, it is Florida here. But she is a tough receiver, somebody that you want to get the ball to in open space because she's shifty, she's quick, and she's also a very relentless rusher, and I think all great defenses have just that elite rusher, right? And I think she kind of brings that aspect to Lindsey Wilson's defense. And, when you have a good rusher or rushers, that really makes everyone else's job easier. So the coverage doesn't always have to be perfect on the back end and whatnot, too. And so adding this speed, I think, is absolutely big time. You add another player who could play both ways and be productive both ways as well. Now, those are only the high school recruits here. And I'm not going to go over every single player just because, we have other teams and athletes we want to talk about, but they also bring in a couple of transfers. They bring in Jade Maziata and Cadence Wormers from Warner. Both players having plenty of experience playing flag football for a while, I feel like. I mean, you could check out our old recap episodes when we used to talk about them last season and the season before that. And so they're going to bring that experience to a Lindsey Wilson team, that is trying to establish themselves. And I really like what they are bringing in already. And then, by the way, Jade Maziata, obviously from New York, but Cadence Wormers is another Pace high school player as well. So, you're just bringing in more people who know Coach Raggard. The chemistry's there in some sort of way, right? And so you're only building on that. It was really good in high school, right? And even though it's high school and we're going into college, that does mean something when you have any sort of success, right? Now, whether it's going to translate or not, we'll see, but I think that's a really good starting place to have compared to some other programs who, are still trying to figure out that chemistry, and it's not quite there between everyone. But, I'll tell you what, it's easier to get that chemistry going when you already have people who know what the program should probably look like. And have found success running it that way as well. So, with all that being said, I really like what they're bringing. Oh, they also bring in Ashton Dickerson from Florida Gateway, I want to say, as well. So you got some veterans up here, right? You got a couple more athletes who have been successful on that next level, who have done their thing for them. And so really, really excited for this Lindsey Wilson team. I think they have a really good recruiting class in general. I like this freshman class. You figured out your quarterback, right? You had a couple skilled players. You had some players on the defense. As far as the transfer portal goes, you get some veterans, people who have been successful and, could potentially have a breakout season taking on that veteran leadership role here for a very young squad. And so altogether, I love the coach that they hired over at Lindsey Wilson. I really like the players they bring in. Legitimately, I'm looking at Amaya Pablo and her film, and I'm like, hey, she is probably a preseason candidate for newcomer of the year, which is, of course, our awards that we do at the end of the year. But she's somebody that, we would keep an eye on as the season went on and just see how much success she is able to get early on here as she leads this young program. And like I said, with Lotta Wolf transferring to Midland, I do think it makes this quarterback battle a lot more clear. There's only one other quarterback on this roster, or at least I should say this first recruiting class, and that is Annabelle Fletcher from Maryland. So we'll see how that turns out. But like I said, I probably expect Amaya Pablo to take starting snaps in their first game. Now, I'm going to go ahead and list off the rest of these players that I did not get to mention because they were also part of this first Lindsey Wilson recruiting class. But we have Mabry Cochran, wide receiver DB from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And like I said, if I say your name wrong, please reach out so that I know how to say it right. So there you go there. They bring in I think it's Nayeli Gomez, running back linebacker from Russell Springs, Kentucky. They bring in some sisters here, Emerson and Harper Gregory, both wide receivers, and then Emerson's a linebacker, Harper's a DB from Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Gabby Cruz from Destin, Florida. Jenna Lindsay from Bowling Green, Kentucky, wide receiver rusher. I think it's Ozzy Madison, wide receiver rusher, linebacker from Atlanta, Georgia. Javine McKnight, wide receiver DB, originally from London, England. Kaylin Newton, wide receiver rusher, linebacker from Taylorsville, Kentucky. Leliana Rios, running back, a linebacker from Mount Washington, Kentucky. Demi Sermon, wide receiver, linebacker, DB, and their punter from Auburndale, Florida. And then you have J.J. Williams, wide receiver, linebacker from Louisville, Kentucky here. As that is the first recruiting class that Lindsey Wilson has brought in. And who knows? They could have also added some other athletes who play other sports at Lindsey Wilson as well. And I'm sure that is something to keep an eye out on. But already, that's a pretty big roster. And, Cody said it best in the last episode. When you're a first-year program, you want to have a decently sized roster. You've seen other programs who start out and, they make it work with who they have, but, it is a tough strain on, young rosters that are made up of mostly freshmen who aren't used to the wear and tear of women's college flag football yet. And, because there's no replacement or somebody who could sub in, they take on even more wear and tear, and that could lead to more serious injuries, obviously, there as well. And then on top of that, if you're a coach and you're starting a new program, you want to have options. You really want to see, okay, who's the best we could field out here, right? And on top of that, you want to make sure that you are actually able to field a team as well, especially in the later half of the season, because obviously that also looks good to recruits that you're trying to bring in later recruiting classes. And so with all of that being said, I think Lindsey Wilson is set up pretty well. I think the quarterback that they have might be better than a lot of starting quarterbacks of other college programs around the country. I think the coach they have, is as accomplished as any coach around the country, maybe even more than some other coaches around the country as well. And it's not easy to coach. Believe me, I know that, being a flag football coach myself. And so I just have so much respect for Chris Raggard and what he was able to do over at Pace in Florida. I know he's going to take over this team. And at the very least, if we're talking floor, I think it can't be that low, right? Because at the end of the day, you have good chemistry, you have talent, you have proven track records. That all has to mean something, and at the very least, I think the floor isn't like in the basement. The floor is probably pretty decent at the very least. Maybe not exactly a winning season, but I'd be surprised if this team did not go at least 500 or was close to that. Now, let's go ahead and look at their schedule, because right now, like I said, it's December 20th when I'm looking at this, so this schedule may not be completely fleshed out, but it looks pretty fleshed out to me here. They got 20 games listed, and obviously that doesn't include the NAIA national tournament at the end, which is invite only. And so for them to make it, I believe they would have to be at least top 10, top 8. But, you know, I'm really excited for this team, because I do think this is a team that could maybe push one of the teams that have, you know, been consistently finishing at the top at the end of the season. They could push one of those squads out, and it could be a new era. Who knows? This is a team that we haven't seen really together before. Yes, there are familiar pieces that have worked together, but the team is still different. The environment is still different. And so let's go ahead and talk about it, right? Let's look at these first couple games, their first 4 to start. I believe they play all first-year programs in Chowan University, Virginia Wesleyan, Hollins, and Ferrum College. I know Chowan, I want to say, is Chowan. Excuse me if I'm saying that wrong. But I think they're D2. I mean, these should be either NCAA teams here or independent. So there you go there. Either way, I think there is a chance they could go 4-0 in these first 4 games. We'll see what happens, but I think Ferrum will probably be their toughest game, and make sure you check out the season preview that Cody went over in the last episode of the Playmakers Corner. But I think in this first 4-game stretch here, Ferrum is probably the toughest. They're also playing away at Virginia too, so I mean you have to account for that on the same day, as well as the game that they're playing Hollins. So they're going to play Hollins first and then Ferrum, and so we'll see what happens. And then also in that Chowan game, they play Virginia Wesleyan on that same day too. So a pair of doubleheaders to start the season, and then they go ahead and play Campbellsville at home in Kentucky. The battle, this might be the I don't want to spread misinformation, but this could be the first women's college flag football game between 2 Kentucky-based universities. So this is history right here. This should be super exciting. Friday night at 7 p.m. It should be a good one. Campbellsville, check out their season preview. They have as much continuity as any team in the NAIA, maybe even the most continuity. It's going to be really interesting to see how Lindsey Wilson stacks up. I'm going to obviously go ahead and predict that Campbellsville probably gets the best of them this early in the season. After that, they go ahead and go to Rockford here to play a little round robin. That's in Illinois, and I just did a season preview on Rockford, so you should check that out. And over there, they're going to play a bunch of teams in Illinois, mostly D3 teams. They're going to play Aurora, Illinois Wesleyan, and Benedictine University Springfield. Ooh, that's a mouthful right there. And so that'll all be up in Illinois. And so I'm just going to be honest here. I know I did a preview on Aurora, Illinois Wesleyan. I mean, they're a first-year program. Benedictine University Springfield, if this is the one that I am thinking about, they're a second-year program, I want to say, as well, but they also lost a lot to the transfer portal already, as they are getting spread out amongst other schools. I mean, those players are going to other schools in the area, and so I'm just going to be honest here. I think there's a good chance that they go 3-0 on this Illinois road trip here. So already, it feels like the wins are kind of stacking. Then they play Cumberland in Tennessee, which I'm going to talk about later on in this episode. That should be a really fun game Wednesday at 5 p.m. I don't know if that's Eastern or Central. I'll have to double check that. But that should be a really, really, really good game. A fun game to play there down in Tennessee. I think both of these programs, at least on paper, are in pretty decent, similar situations, right? We'll see who comes out on top here. I don't think that's the last time they're playing them either. And so I'm just going to go ahead and play it safe with these predictions and say they probably split the season matchup 1-1 because they do play twice in this season, at least on their schedule so far. So there you go. And then they have the Flag Frenzy tournament in Campbellsville, Kentucky. Myself, the guys here at Playmakers Corner should be there live to cover that, so we are excited for that one. And they're going to play the likes of Siena Heights, Rockford, Wittenberg University, and then Life here. Siena Heights and Life obviously being NAIA schools. Rockford, Wittenberg, I believe, are D3 programs. Wittenberg, I also want to say, is a first-year program as well. Siena Heights, that'll be an interesting one. I mean, Siena Heights will be getting their quarterback back, the one that should have started last year but was out with a season-ending injury, I believe. And so I don't quite know how that team will look like. They managed last season, to win some games even without a real quarterback, and I think that's saying a lot about what that coaching staff was able to do. So unfortunately, I will probably call that one a loss, but we'll see. I think a lot of that really hinges on how much Siena Heights develops, though, so we'll see. Then they play Rockford. I mean, they have a quarterback over there. I just don't know about the rest. I will probably favor Lindsey Wilson there. Same against Wittenberg. And then it gets interesting against Life, because Life is a team that will be looking to make this invitational here. They really cannot afford a loss to Lindsey Wilson. If Lindsey Wilson gets a win against a team like that, that'll probably help the resume as far as the invitational goes. This could go either way. To be fair, the Life's roster has not released yet, and I still feel like even last year they had a lot of young talent who just needed some more experience, like one more year. And so if they take that step, I'm probably going with Life, but who knows? I think I'm going to favor Life for now, but like the Siena Heights game, who knows what they look like in year two. I think it's still early. Then they play Milligan. This is probably a loss. Just being honest, they're hosting Milligan too, so that's tough. Milligan, I don't think they will have Sarah Rankhorn this season, and I know Gino will be doing a preview on them soon here. If not this week, then I would say probably next week. But this is a Milligan team that is coming off a silver bracket championship last season nationally. They did really well, and I mean, they're pretty much returning everybody, minus, a couple contributors on the defensive side, but the offense is pretty much intact outside of Sarah Rankhorn, but they do bring back Abby Lynn Laprice, who had a really good freshman season. So I just think right now, Milligan, they have a lot more experience on this level, a lot more chemistry playing with each other at this level. This should go Milligan's way. Then they play Campbellsville again here. I think, like I said, they're probably going to split it. I'd be surprised if they sweep them in wins or losses, so we'll just see how that goes. Then they play Milligan again, this time in Tennessee here. I still think they don't beat them. That's just me, though. But who knows? I'm open to being, wrong. Maybe Amaya Pablo ends up being the best quarterback in the country this next season. It would be crazy, but it could happen, right? We'll see. I still favor Milligan as of right now. I think I just need to see it with my own eyes. But that's going to be a fun one for sure. Then they play Cumberland again here. I like the Campbellsville game. The more I think about this, or Campbellsville games, the more I think about this, I think it'll be split as well. So there you go. Or maybe I said it the other way around. I can't remember. I think Cumberland and Campbellsville, those will both be close games. Then they play Emmanuel. They should beat them. They play Aurora again. They should beat them. Wittenberg, they should beat them. So after going through their schedule here, and they could still add more, I think there's a pretty good chance that they at least have a winning record here. Now, it's going to get interesting because you got teams like, looking at NAIA teams like Campbellsville, Life, Milligan, Siena Heights. For them to make the invitational, they will probably have to win the majority of those games because really those are all teams that are kind of on the outside looking in, but they are just outside. There's a good chance that they can get in. And so if you want to make it, you got to beat those teams in front of you to start. And those are teams that have more experience, that have a little bit more continuity, right? And so I think that's probably the biggest storyline for Lindsey Wilson. Will the continuity that they invested in, head coach, quarterback, players, and his connections, right, will all of that pay off, right? And by pay off, I mean, will they find more success early on because they have that experience together? I lean towards yes. I think that is the logical thing to think right now. But who knows? There are growing pains with any new program. We'll see what happens. But I'm just going to be honest. I really like what they have. They have a lot of success, proven success coming in. They have a lot of talent coming in. I think it's really just going to be about putting it together and seeing how this team just responds to team situations, responding to adversity, responding to getting a big win and then having to play another game without being too high, right? That is an actual issue because that's how upsets happen. That's how off games happen, right? And so I'm really interested just to see how consistent this team can be early on. Especially with all the stuff I just mentioned there. So we'll see what happens. I think there's a good chance that, if not this year, maybe even next year, this team could be a true dark horse in the NAIA and one of the best teams in the country here, a top 25 team in the country here in the coming years. I will say this. We are doing a top 25 rankings of, it's going to be made up of NAIA teams, D1, D2, JUCO, right? And as of right now, just from what I've seen, on this roster, from the highlights games I've been able to watch, I have Lindsey Wilson in my top 25, even though they haven't played a game yet. That might be controversial, but I think they're a top 25 women's college flag football team in the country. This upcoming season, though, they're going to have to prove it. That's the big thing. And so, I hope they prove me right. And we are rooting for them. Congrats, by the way, to Coach over there for getting that college job. I think he's going to do a great job. Excited to see what they do over at Lindsey Wilson. Excited to see how those players play against really high-level competition on the college level this upcoming season. And like I said, rooting for them and just excited to see how it all goes down. Speaking of going down, let's go ahead and stay down here in the South and go over to Cumberland University, where we are in Tennessee. Just like Lindsey Wilson, they will be entering their first season on the NAIA level. And also technically, by the way, they are in the same conference, the Mid-South Conference. Campbellsville is in there as well. I don't know if they're going to do a conference championship this year. I forgot to mention that in the Lindsey Wilson segment there. So we'll see. If not this year, I think for sure next year, as more teams join, they should do an official conference championship. So just wanted to make sure I put that out there. But let's go ahead and talk about Cumberland here. They are going to be led by head coach Stephen Miller, a longtime boys football coach who has also coached just all sorts of sports here, such as track and field, basketball, softball, and powerlifting as well. He's coached all over and from everywhere from Tennessee. Obviously, the last couple years he's been doing that, and then Texas, Louisiana, and Michigan as well. And then has some pretty decent administrative experience being an assistant principal too, I believe. I could be wrong though. And then an athletic director as well. And so a whole bunch of coaching experience here. And then obviously somebody who knows how to manage a program, right? Build a program, being in positions of leadership and whatnot. So excited to see how that goes. And then he will also have 2 GAs. I got to shout them out here in Riley Scholl. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And Noah Owsley, I want to say. So there you go there. That is the Cumberland Flag football coaching staff. Let's talk about the roster here. So they have the experience as far as coaching goes, but let's talk about the experience on this roster, because this roster is almost, I can't say exclusively, but the wide majority, except for maybe a handful of players, 3 or 4 players, are all Tennessee natives or from Tennessee in some sort of way. You have a couple athletes who play other sports, I believe, who are not from Tennessee, but I mean, the majority of this group is all Tennessee. You have a couple Texas players, I think one person from California here, but and then a couple from Kentucky as well. I should mention that too, but it is a Tennessee-filled roster, and so I believe the state of Tennessee officially sanctioned girls flag football on the high school level last year. Then obviously there have been other programs going on since then. I know Nashville, the Metro public school systems, they have their own thing, and there's a couple players from that as well, and then you have some other teams that were part of a pilot program of some sort. So most of the players coming in don't have the most experience, but they are pretty decent athletes. And so I'm just going to go down the line here. Let's go ahead and start with Macy Fowler, a 3-time Tennessee girls flag football state champion for Ravenwood, I believe, listed at linebacker and rusher. I mean, look, she brings a lot of winning experience, so there's that, number one. But number two, I think she's a very good linebacker with good instincts, plays with a certain aggression that really sets the tone for defense. And I mean, you're going to need that. You're going to need some sort of leader for the defense to go out there and make it happen and command a defense while also bringing, winning and that winning experience to a new program so that you could build this thing right and build that culture right, most importantly. And so expect Macy Fowler to be a big part of this squad and its future moving forward. Now, I want to talk about these next couple players. They're all from the same high school, Pearl Cone, in Tennessee here. They played in that Metro League, that Nashville Metro League here, and were super successful. Let's start with the quarterback first, Madison Woodard. First off, I got to see a couple of her highlights and whatnot here and there. Saw some newspaper clippings as well, but just from what I was able to watch, she has a rocket of an arm. I think every now and then you come across a quarterback who just spins the ball differently from everyone else, right? The ball pops out of her arm. It's electric. I mean, it's powerful is what it is, and pretty effortless. She could, as far as power goes, throw all over the field. But on top of that, I do think she throws with good accuracy and timing. I know in a couple of her clips, there are no rushers, which is interesting here. But, there are also some clips, I think there's one that comes to mind where, the rusher's on her and it's not maybe the best base there because she's kind of throwing away from the rusher here, but she throws an absolute dot like 40 yards downfield, leading the receiver on a throw and made it look easy on that one. And, I mean, if you're not going to take my word for it, she also received a number of offers, including from Marymount, who has won their conference champions and were undefeated last year and have a pretty decent quarterback of their own over there. And then she was also offered by Milligan, who also has a really good quarterback over there, but obviously looking for a player to kind of mentor under Bridget Kaiser, as she is an upperclassman now. But Madison Woodard, she chose to go to Cumberland, and she had plenty of other offers as well here, and I think this is an absolute steal for them. I mean, whenever you could get a player that just has the potential even to be your program's quarterback, that's big time. Right? I don't think, and I've said this a million times, but if you don't have a quarterback, you really don't have a contending program. And I think at the very least, you have somebody that could either develop into that or, in my opinion, could play right away. And I would probably say is the projected starter because of her arm talent, because of her experience. On top of that, she does bring in some of her teammates who are electric as well here. And we just talked about how consistency and chemistry does matter. And so let's talk about those two teammates once more. I apologize if I say these names wrong. I am doing my best, but we have, I believe, Kira Johnson and then Dynasty Davis. Like I said, if I'm saying those wrong, please reach out because I want to make sure I say those names right because I have a feeling I'm going to be saying those names a lot in our weekly recaps for women's college flag football. But, those two receivers will also be joining Madison here at Cumberland, and they were electric when they played together. Dynasty, they're really both two-way players, right? But Dynasty, she is just a true two-way player with extremely strong hands and just great ball skills. There's one play that I watched, I'm pretty sure it was a fade route here where Madison put it on the money just right before, and it's such a good ball here because the corner literally sees the ball come out, and by the time she snaps her head, the ball is right over her, right? But it is Davis here that is making that catch right over her, and I mean, you can't ask for a better head top than that, right? And she's made other great plays as well, obviously, but I think she is somebody who has reliable hands who, you know, you could trust in one-on-one situations to go make a play. On top of that, you bring in Kira Johnson, who also has great ball skills, right? But I do think her real strength lies after the run. When she gets the ball in her hands, she's electric, has elite, and I mean elite acceleration and speed. Someone that, you know, you could throw to and she'll take the top off of defense. And whenever you have a game changer like that, that really changes the whole defensive game plan for a team here. On top of just really good ball skills as well. Like I said, the number of times that she would just, like Madison would just throw it and she would go track it. I mean, the skill is definitely there, as well as the elite athleticism. She can not only play on this level, but I think even dominate on this level as well. And so that little big three from Pearl Cone, they were super productive. I mean, at one point, they were on a 24-game winning streak in high school, and they got some highlights. You got to check them out. I watched a lot of those on Twitter/X, I guess, if you want to call it that. And it was electric, to say the least. It was electric. You know, this is a trio that can definitely make up a decent core here, giving Cumberland a program that, you know, could go score with the best of them. And in flag football, right, those big plays, offensive production, it does matter. There are very few defensive-minded teams that are also a top team in the country. You have to be a top team in the country, you have to have some sort of top offense, at least a productive offense at the very least. And I think this is a very great place to start. And on top of that, they've played together for the last couple years, so you really can't complain about that. The chemistry's there. I think the talent is there athletically. I mean, just from what I've seen, looking through film, they really stand out from the clips I've seen. So there you go there. They also bring in, I want to mention her as well, they bring in Trinity Ryan from Laverne in Tennessee. She's a 5'7" quarterback who threw for over 2,000 yards and rushed for 700. She's also a decent athlete as well. I think as far as the quarterback competition goes, it's going to be between her and Madison Woodard. They also have another quarterback on the roster in Carson Bigelow, but I was not able to find any film on her, so we'll just have to see how that goes. So very interested in seeing how the quarterback battle goes down, but I do like the talent that I see there. I think there's so much that you can do with what's over there. You could get really creative if you really wanted to, but really, I can't express this enough, like the offensive firepower and potential they have. Now, playing on the college level and that translating, we'll see what happens, right? We'll definitely see what happens there. And then before we move on and talk about the schedule, I want to mention Zora Neal from, I think it's Collierville, in their first year. Well, I guess it was her senior season. She had 27 flagpoles, 8 pass deflections, and 5 interceptions. 3 of those were pick sixes, by the way, in her senior season. She has good speed, and I think she will be a nice DB to have in your rotation and on your roster as well. And so I think Cumberland is in a pretty good spot. They have some nice weapons. And by the way, Dynasty Davis and Kira Johnson play both ways, so they could also both play DB, which I assume is what they're going to do. You add on a linebacker like Macy Fowler, this defense could really be popping, and I also think this offense could really be popping if you find the right recipe for success that's consistent as well. And I mean, look, I say this about every new program. There's going to be growing pains. I think it's illogical to expect everything to go perfectly, right? But that is what they're going to have to work with, or work through, I should say. Stephen Miller and this coaching staff, they're going to have to work through that. This young team, which I mean, there's a lot of freshmen on this team. They're going to have to grow together. Is it impossible to find success early on? No. Look at the fierce freshies from William Woods, the only all-freshman starting lineup in all of women's college flag football last year, I believe. They were electric. And so it's definitely possible to find that success early on, and I really wouldn't be surprised if Cumberland did that here in year one. Now, as far as schedule goes, they have not posted their official schedule. I assume they're going to play the likes of Milligan because they're close, right? Lindsey Wilson and Campbellsville, I believe, have them on their schedule as well. Like I said at the beginning, I don't anticipate them to have a conference championship, and so I don't think there will be a consistent conference schedule here. But I'm sure they're going to fill it out with D2s, D3s, some junior colleges. They are an NAIA team, so for them to have a postseason outside of a conference championship, they would have to be invited. They have to make the top 8, or at least I think it's either top 8 or top 10, right? And it's going to be tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be tough. But I think this is an excellent opportunity for this team to just showcase all the talent that comes out of Tennessee, really, and showcase, what they could do on the national and college level. And I think, I'm just going to be honest, I think they'll stack up well. I think they'll be just fine. This year, it's going to be a learning experience. Next year, we'll see, right? But it's something to build on. They have a very healthy number here. A lot of players on this roster. Let me go ahead and count that actually real quick. Over 30 players listed on the roster. Now we'll see if that holds up, right? But you'd rather have the numbers than not, because you never know, right? You have some really good players right here, and I'm excited to see how this first season goes for this young Cumberland University squad. So best of luck to Coach Miller, and best of luck to this program. We're rooting for them, and we're really excited to be able to hopefully watch them here. I believe they're playing in Kentucky at the Flag Football Frenzy, so we'll definitely, if they are, we'll see them live for sure. But if not, still really looking forward to following them and covering them in their inaugural season here in 2026. All right, now, last but not least, we were talking about yet another new program, but we're moving away from NAIA, and we're talking about the D2 level, and that is Mars Hill University here, part of the Conference Carolinas in North Carolina. They will be playing their first season here in 2026, like a lot of other teams in their conference. In that Conference Carolinas there. But let's go ahead and start with their coach, who's a familiar face. It's Max Switzer. He was the former head coach over at Heston Community College, who is now on the NAIA level. And, fun fact, I actually got to meet Coach Switzer here in Colorado. I don't think it was 2 years ago, but I want to say it was last year as he was recruiting some of our players, and he actually gave us the inside scoop on Heston joining the NAIA ranks. But now he is over at Mars Hill as their first head coach in program history. But let's talk about his experience and all the success he was able to find, in case you aren't familiar. But, Heston Community College, they played on the JUCO level. They would play some NAIA teams, some junior college teams in 2023 and 2024. They were the national runner-ups. I believe Cody was able, and Gino might have been there for one of those, but they're able to watch them live and see them in action. On top of that, they were Kansas Junior College Conference champs as well, which is definitely big time. And he just has a really good flag football track record. A lot of success in the past. His players, they've gone on and played for other NAIA programs as well, and so he's done a lot with, I would argue, not as much over at Heston, and now he's going to a D2 here in Mars Hill that's in North Carolina. And so they have a good coach. They have a coach who's proven, who's found success, right, on the national level. Now it comes to building. And so let's talk about what he is building with, and talk about the roster that he has as of right now, December 20th. And I want to start with this player. I want to start with CeCe Hale, a dual threat quarterback listed as a quarterback safety here from Georgia. Graduated in 2024, but is continuing her career at Mars Hill. Look, just watching her film, got to watch her highlight reel from high school, as well as some highlights from a recent tournament, which I believe was fives here, where she was playing quarterback. But I mean, let's start at her core. She's an athlete. I think coming out of high school, she was the definition of a dual threat, just a very smooth runner of the football, good footwork, long strides, right? Somebody who could go ahead and gash defenses with her legs and make it happen on the ground. I will also mention this as well. Showed excellent ball skills, playing safety and lining up at wide receiver. She made some plays and showed that she's altogether a very versatile athlete. Now, that was her coming out of high school a year later, right? Because right now she's considered a sophomore this season. Watching over some of the clips that she got from her most recent tournament, it looks like she has definitely refined her game, especially as a passer, which I think is big time, and is throwing some very accurate passes downfield and forcing teams to respect the fact that she could attack you vertically consistently. Really liked some of the passes I saw from that tournament, from those highlights here. And so I think regardless, I mean, she's going to play either way. This isn't the biggest roster here for Mars Hill. They only have 11 players listed right now. And that's a big, just difference between Lindsey Wilson, who had an initial recruiting class of 20. Cumberland, we just talked about them, have over 30, right? And so when you don't have a big roster, you need athletes who are versatile. I think CeCe Hale absolutely encompasses the versatile athlete. But if I had to bet on it, right, I think there's one other quarterback here in Jade Perez from Florida, who we'll talk about in a little bit. I would probably assume that she's going to start for them. Now, whether it's a quarterback, we'll see, but I would also probably say that I would view her as the favorite to be the starter. Like I said, we'll see what happens. Things change, right? You want to roll with different things as time goes on if they're not working out right away. It is the college ranks now. But I like the development that CeCe Hale has shown from the time she's graduated to right now, even. I think she has worked super hard, and you could see that in her game. And as a quarterback, I mean, that's what you want. You want somebody who's a grinder, somebody who loves the game, right? Who's not afraid of just getting out there and playing and competing and doing her thing. And so I think she's going to be a great cornerstone for this Mars Hill program, and I'm really excited to get to see her play some college flag football. Now, speaking of the other quarterback here, we have Jade Perez coming from Florida, where she did win offensive MVP her senior year, being productive both through the ground and the air. I believe she had 900 passing yards and 400 rushing yards as a senior, but we will see who gets to start year one. I mean, she's also an athlete, right? Don't get it twisted. She is listed at quarterback and corner, and like I said, she's an athlete. She's a dual threat, right? She's somebody that you could use all over as well. Now, do I think, from what I've seen, she's as polished as a CeCe Hale? I don't know, but also maybe I'm just not seeing enough. And so I'm really excited to see how they use her. And they could use both of them, right? I think it's not crazy to say that you could have a 2-quarterback system that is productive. But either way, expect her to be a contributor, a big contributor to this team. And then last but not least here, I mean, it was a struggle to find some film and highlights on some players. I want to shout out, I think it's Sakia Tatum from Nevada, or from Henderson, Nevada, I want to say, listed at linebacker on her huddle. I assume she's going to be a big part of that defense here. Also coming from the other side of the country to North Carolina, which is big time. But speaking of that, you also have, I think it's Amani Serta, from Albuquerque, New Mexico, coming from the other side of the country, playing wide receiver and rusher. We'll see how she's able to contribute. But somebody who I'm really looking forward to play some women's college flag football, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I mispronounce your last name, but we have Mary Lou Suni, I want to say, wide receiver out of Henderson, Nevada here. As we know, Nevada, one of the very first founding states of girls high school flag football here. She played for them and was one of the most productive wide receivers, not only in Nevada, but in the entire country here. Last season, as a senior, caught 139 receptions for 1,864 passing yards and 29 receiving touchdowns. That stat line alone is more than a lot of quarterbacks in the country, so that is crazy here. She has strong hands, was really only able to find one clip here, but demonstrated very strong hands, and I think is going to be looking to be one of the top offensive options for Mars Hill this upcoming season here. I think for Mars Hill to snag maybe one of the best, not maybe, but one of the best wide receivers in the country in year one, that's big time. Right? You need to have a wide receiver that could catch some footballs from these quarterbacks, and you have some options there at quarterback. But I do think it is really hard to establish a program if you don't have somebody with wide receiver one potential. Obviously it's better to have multiple, right? But I think to have somebody who was so productive in high school, especially in a state that is pretty fleshed out as far as girls high school flag football goes, and, dominated on that level, that's a pretty big deal. That's a huge deal even. And so I think Mars Hill is in a position to, really compete here. Even though they have a very small roster, only 11 players, I think they could definitely compete as well as you could hope for. But go out there and show out, right? And it's important that, year one you show out because you want something to build on going into next season. And then obviously as well, you got to throw this out there, right? You got to be thinking about okay, flag football recruits, are they going to want to come to a successful program? Yes, that's obvious, right? Even if it doesn't always translate to wins, finding success somewhere does matter. And they have plenty of talent here at Mars Hill. And so it's going to be interesting. Now, looking at their schedule, they do play in the Conference Carolinas. So they're going to play teams like King, Ferrum, Hollins, Elise McRae, who are waiting on the roster, but I'm pretty sure that's a good team. Wingate, who I'm very high on, talked about last week on a season preview and is still probably my pick to win the Conference Carolinas, right? Mount Olive, Barden, Manual, right? Mount St. Mary's, Chowan, Erskine. That is their conference, D2 level. It's going to be brand new. From what I've seen so far, I really like Wingate. A lot of familiar faces there on top of, maybe some faces that I'm not familiar with, but I've seen their film and I think they are very talented. I think that's going to be a tough program. Elise McRae, I know they have some really good players over there as well, but I think Mars Hill is right up there. Definitely, if I had to pick, I would say they're probably in that top half of teams here in the conference, just based off of high school film and what I have been able to find through, my research and whatnot. I think they're probably a top half team. But this is going to be a tough conference, and so it's going to be interesting to see what happens year one. Now, like any conference that's starting, the Sun Conference, KCAC, we were there when we saw them first get started. Just because you weren't as successful as you wanted to be in year one doesn't mean that's where you're going to be at for the rest of your, program's life, right? But this is a stepping stone, and so we're going to see what happens here in year one. In addition to their conference, they play some pretty decent out-of-conference teams here. They play Milligan, who's tough, right? I talked about them earlier on in this episode. Won the silver bracket. A lot of talent. They're pretty much returning everyone except for Sarah Rancorn and I think Tatiana Buno as well, which is tough to lose, obviously. But the core is the same. They bring back the quarterback, and that's pretty important, as well as their head coach. They're probably not beating them. They also have a lot of depth, too. So that is a team that, if you don't manage the athletes correctly, Milligan could run teams into the ground with their depth. Now, luckily, they have a guy in Max Switzer who I think is probably more than capable, but maybe even the best equipped at, running a program with not the biggest amount of numbers, right? And so I think he'll be able to figure it out, but that's a tough game. I don't really expect them to win in Milligan on February 28th, but we'll see. That same day, they also have to play Campbellsville, who I talked about in this episode and in a previous preview. I mean, they bring back a lot of continuity. Players, coaches, right? I think they might bring back the most in the entire country. That's not going to be an easy game here, especially early on in the season for a team that is still, figuring out their footing with each other, and then, getting a good feel of what works best for this program. And so I kind of expect both of those to be losses early on, but then you play Erskine, Joe, and Mount St. Mary's, Emmanuel. I would expect them to probably win those based off of the rosters I have seen so far. Maybe under further review, it's a little bit closer, but I like what Mars Hill has. I like their coach too. I think those should all be wins there. Then they play Florida Gulf Coast, which is a club team, so we'll see how that goes. Then they play most of their, I believe, Barden and Mount Olive are Conference Carolinas team. Then they play Cumberland. That's a first-year program. Just talked about them on this episode. I don't think that's going to be an easy win. They got some depth over there, too. Both first-year programs, I think, as far as coaching goes, one in Mars Hill has more flag football experience than the other, I believe. So that could maybe be an issue to exploit there. It could go either way, but we'll see. Then they play Winston-Salem. They should beat them. Wingate will be tough. Not going to lie. That's going to be a tough one. That's one you really want to win or at least compete with early on here. They have a lot of proven players over there as well as a proven coach. So right now I'm probably going to go with Wingate on that one. Then they play Milligan again. That'll be tough. Lise McRae, I have not seen their roster yet, like in whole. Shout out Natalia Hernandez de Leon, friend of the podcast. I know she's a great player that's on that squad. I believe her former quarterback, Mackenzie Hicks. Well, she would be former if she's still with her, but she would be on that roster as well. Interested to see who else is on there. I think that one could go either way, but that's a tough game. Then they play at Cumberland. They realistically, I don't know if they win both of these. I think late in the season, right? The depth might become more of an issue as the season goes on. Cumberland has the advantage. I'm probably going Cumberland here. Then they play Siena Heights. Talked about them a little bit on the last preview with Cumberland. That's a team that's bringing back the quarterback. I believe they're bringing back the quarterback that they wanted to start year one, but she couldn't because she got hurt. I think that's a tough game. We'll see what happens, though. I have a really hard time picking a winner of that one. I'm not even going to lie. So we'll see. Ferrum, I'm probably going to go Mars Hill's way. King, I have not done enough research into them. I think that'll be a tough game, though. But I do think they'll beat Hollins at the end of the season. So with all that being said, I would probably expect Mars Hill to be very close to 500. Winning record, it's going to depend on some of these games that I think is going to swing. And even then, I think they could still add on some games to this schedule. We'll see what happens there. But either way, I think they have a very good core. They have a good coach over there. I'm excited to see what they do this upcoming season going into year one. And once again, shout out Coach Switzer, rooting for him and rooting for this Mars Hill University and wishing them all the best of luck as they go ahead and compete in their inaugural season in 2026. Alrighty, thank you once again for rocking with us on this episode. Once again, shout out all these new programs. Really excited to get to cover them this season. So much talent from all over the country, and I think that's probably my favorite part about doing these season previews, getting to see, what sort of players will get to showcase their talent here. And even then, there's always one, right, or a couple players that are under the radar that I don't know about yet, and so I'm really excited to see who even then breaks out that I didn't expect to break out and establishes themselves emerges, really comes into their own as a cornerstone of one of these programs. That is always exciting. And then on top of that, some great coaches over here. Really excited to see what they do in these college ranks here. Some of them already here before, right? But excited to see what happens regardless. So once again, thank you so much for rocking with us. Make sure you check out our other season previews at Playmaker Corner on social media and really anywhere you can listen to podcasts. And if you want to, know when the next episode's dropping, make sure you follow us on social media as well. But until next time, we'll catch you later.